Welcome back to another income report video. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how much I made in January selling low content and medium content books on KDP and how much I spent on ads and just other expenses. If you're interested in how I've done in previous months on KDP, I will link to the income report playlist in the description of this video. So January does tend to be the month after Q4 where sales take a big dip. I've tended to have quite good January since I've started, and I think that's because some of my books just seem to perform well at this time of year. I didn't specifically in the past focus on books that were gift related all that much, and so my Decembers didn't tend to be as big as some other people's, but that did change quite a bit last year because a new book that I published ended up being quite a gift related book, I suppose, and ended up doing really well in December. And I certainly saw a big dip in sales as far as that book went in January, and now it's barely selling anything. But books that tend to sell well in January are going to be things that are probably centered around self-improvement of all kinds, and particularly ones that people might choose to buy for themselves as a gift, so not necessarily that would be bought as a gift for them. I think people use their Amazon gift cards and things like that to buy themselves a treat. Let me know how your January sales were. For me, it was a good month, but it was less than my previous January in 2023, and I'll explain why I think that could be a bit later on in this video. So I didn't publish any new books in January or in December. I actually moved house in December and there was a lot going on in general in my life, so I just focused on monitoring my ads. And then in January I also went back to YouTube after a 4-month break, and I still haven't got back into a routine yet for KDP. But after spending a lot of time recently on DALL-E 3 in ChatGPT and seeing how good that can be, I'm keen on getting some new books completed and have a lot of ideas for things I'd like to do. I usually set up a whole plan at the start of January for what I'd like to achieve in the coming year, but I haven't done that yet, and I haven't done it this time. I think I am going to try and do it because I am someone who needs goals and plans, or else I just go off track. And I go off track even when I do have goals and plans, so without them I'll definitely be all over the place. So I do have to rein myself back quite regularly to get into a routine. But now we're in February, I have got back into working mode. I've actually been publishing a lot of designs on Merch and Redbubble again this month. So if you'd like me to do a video about that, then let me know in the comments. So before I share any of my royalties for January, I just wanted to show a couple of other stats. This is a breakdown of where I sell most of my books. And as you can see, I sold a majority of my books in the UK in January. That was 57.8% of the entire sales, and that's fairly typical these days. It used to be that the USA was more, and then it was pretty equal with the UK, and now it's more in the UK, with the USA making up 34.5% of total book sales. And here is just a comparison of how many books I actually sold in January 2023 versus January 2024, and you'll see it's very similar. However, even though I sold slightly more books in January 2024, I still made less money, as I will show you in a second. This can only be down to the royalty decrease that happened in 2023, meaning that we now earn less in most cases per book, unless we significantly rose our prices last year. And I did raise some of mine, but many of them did stay the same. In 2023 in total, I sold over 49,000 books, and over 9,000 of them were actually in December alone, which I think makes up about 19% of the total royalties for the year. So you can see how much of an impact December can have, in particular, on your overall yearly sales. So now I'm going to share the total royalties I made in January this year and also last year. So in January this year, I made $9,042, and my highest day was $597, and the lowest was $187. So I only tend to make a couple of dollars or so per book, but I do have nearly 600 books, and plenty of those do sell on a monthly basis. So I might make a couple of sales here and there with maybe a couple of hundred books, but then I will make hundreds of sales with a few different books. So while it might seem like a lot that you have to sell, you do have to remember that this is across various countries as well. So primarily that's in the UK and the USA, but also an increasing amount of sales are being made in Canada and Australia gradually as well. And then there are a few other countries as well dotted about that do make sales too. So my highest day was quite near the start of the month where I made nearly $600. But overall, it was a pretty good month. So in January 2023, I made $9,589. So $500 more back then. And I also spent more on ads this year. So it was more like $1,000 more when you take that into account. And it was very up and down in 2023. So I think it was quite unusual in that month. I had a big day where I made nearly $800. However, I didn't publish many books in 2023 and my main books are already pretty established. So I can imagine that maybe this year might be fairly similar to last year. I think if I want to grow things any further, I do need to create more books. There's definitely going to be more competition coming up on KDP, especially with the rise of other AI tools. I think the reason why the royalties last year were higher but with less sales was basically down to the royalty decrease in 2023. And I think the reason that sales didn't grow that much from the previous year is just that, as I said, I haven't put out many new books. And also, many of the ones that are selling in January are still the main ones that sold last January. So there isn't anything new that's selling. By comparison, there was in December a new book that was, but that dropped off in January. So some of the top sellers have also switched around as well. Last year, my top seller sold 800 copies in January, and this year only 400 copies, whereas another made 400 the previous year and 800 this year. And then a lot of the top 10 were all in different positions with all different amounts, completely different to the previous year. So how well each book sells is definitely up and down, and you can't rely on them staying consistent from one year to the next by any means. And that's going to be down to a variety of reasons, depending on, where you're ranking on Amazon and also how much competition there is. Some books might start outranking you and so on. So it's definitely not something that's going to be stable indefinitely. And that's why it's better to definitely keep creating books over time and add to your overall catalogue of books. This is my ad spend for January. I spent $400 roughly in the US, 62 Canadian, 361 pounds and 29 Australian dollars. And my highest ACOS was in Australia, which was 48%. Basically, all of my ads went a bit crazy at the start of the month, and I did have to switch some off across the board. And I also tried to optimize some. The reason why the other three look quite low is just because that's the overall ACOS for the whole month, and some were really low. But overall, it worked out anyway. I wasn't even looking at ads at the end of the month, to be honest. Everything was quite good overall. The total ad spend in January then was $903. In total, in the previous year, I spent $431, so that was quite a lot less. My total profit in January then was $9,042, and then minus the expenses comes out at $8,029. My expenses were reduced a bit because I reduced my Midjourney subscription, and I think I reduced my enhanced subscription. There was definitely a couple anyway that I reduced, and it turned out that now it's just over $100 again, and I'm really happy with that month in total. So thank you very much for watching. Please let me know in the comments how your January was, and if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to ask me in the comments and I will try my very best to get back to you. So that's all for now. Have a great rest of your day, and I will speak to you again very soon.